Hello everybody, welcome back to the Soullight Radio. Today's show comes at you from Thursday, August the 2nd of the year 2012. I'm your host John Glover and this is today's news. President Obama has authorised a covert US support for the Syrian rebels. Now what this is about is he signed a secret order allowing the CIA and other American agencies, namely Al-Qaeda, to support rebels seeking to overthrow the Assad regime. It comes from a US source out of Reuters. It's been reported at the RT News network. Now, basically, what it's saying here is the full extent of the assistance in the finding allows the CIA to give the Syrian rebels is unclear. It is also unknown precisely when Obama signed the order. The Obama administration has been open about providing non-military support to the Syrian opposition. But on Wednesday, the State Department said it had allotted a total of $25 million for non-lethal assistance to the Free Syrian Army. Some of that money may not be used to buy communication devices such as encrypted radios. US officials said. The State Department also said that the United States had set aside a further $64 million in humanitarian aid for the Syrian people, which is all a pile of hogwash because basically they're the guys out there that are illegally setting up and falsely setting up these acts of terror which are now being supported and shown on the media. So basically what's happening over there, guys, is the Americans are basically going out there illegally. It's a form of occupation. And now what this is about is Assad's actually winning the war. He's actually getting his country back. And the powers that be don't really like that because, let's face it, if Syria doesn't fall to the might of the American military complex, then basically what's going to happen is that anyone else who's under their atrocities is going to stand up and fight just twice as hard because Syria remain free. So it's not in the globalist best interest, should we say, to allow Syria to stand on its own 2 feet. Unfortunately for them, also standing with the Assad regime in the, believe it or not, in the purview of democracy is the fact that you've got China and Russia both bolstering the Assad regime. So this could get dirty quickly, guys. It's something really to keep our eyes on. Moving on to further news today. The creator of WikiLeaks, a gentleman called Julian Assange, he was actually under house arrest at the moment for leaking truthful documents from multiple sources in the States and worldwide regarding the atrocities that the globalists get up to. This man was arrested, presented with numerous charges, and basically now is having to defend himself. Now what this is about, the American legal system is now saying, the wiki lawyer that's actually representing Mr. Assange is actually saying the US investigation into Mr. Assange was unprecedented in its size and scale, which basically means there was nothing like it before. So the entire military-industrial complex's lawyers and everyone else and the globalist bankers all went after this man because by telling the truth he put himself in a really bad position, and now he's asking the country of Ecuador for political asylum. Now, basically what that means, guys, is he wants to be extradited to Ecuador and possibly tried there rather than being tried in the US, which is a death sentence for him, because nowhere in the Western world will this man get a fair trial because he was out there exposing these entities for what they are. The report comes out of RT, and basically it goes on to say, a US criminal inquiry against WikiLeaks frontman has researched an unprecedented size and scale. Julian Assange's lawyer told RT, Sweden, on the other hand, seems to have turned a deaf ear to all offers to interview Assange anywhere in the UK. So basically, his home country of Sweden, he's a Swedish gentleman, they're actually refusing anyone to interview him within his house arrest in the UK, which again isn't fair. It's not common law. He should have the right to speak his mind. If you remember when the Salman Rushdie thing was taking place, due to that book he wrote called The Satanic Rites, they placed what they call a holy death, a holy bounty on his head, which is called a fatwa, yeah? And basically what happened was he was still able to talk from his house arrest. He was still able to address the media and so on and so forth. So where did the law change? It basically hasn't changed, but it seems to be that whether you're, the Aurora shooter, whether you're Julian Assange, everything seems to change to suit the scale of what you need. Because if Assange is allowed to talk to media and everything else, then basically what he might disclose could be shattering for the globalists. So basically, it goes on to say the frontman of the whistleblowing website has been holed up in Ecuador's diplomatic mission for over 6 weeks, seeking political asylum. Assange lost an extradition appeal to the UK Supreme Court in May and will be sent to Sweden once British law enforcement manages to get hold of him. But while this gentleman is claiming political asylum, he is under the purview of the protection and the charge of the Ecuadorian people and their government. So let's hope that we can create enough noise about this, both politically and within our own communities, that we can start to shed some light on this man's plight, because basically this is not being reported on mainstream media. None of this is getting out, and it's about time we started standing up for our fellow man, I think. Moving on to other news today. This comes out of Infowars.com and it's written by a gentleman called Kurt Nimmo. The article reads, Iran ordered to pay billions to 9/11 victims' families by a US judge. I'm sorry, that says us judge. I missed the dot in the middle of the US. Basically, what's happening now? A federal judge in New York has ruled that Al Qaeda and Iran were responsible for the September 11th, 2001 attacks, and they've been ordered to pay the victims' families $6 billion in compensation. Now, just to break this down a little bit, folks, anyone who's in the Truther movement, or is listening to anyone who's within the Truther movement, or has even watched the footage of the short change video and stuff like that, will know that this was an inside job. It was the biggest false flag in the history of mankind, possibly, outside of the wars. And I think basically what they're doing now, they're ordering the Iranian people. Now, remember yesterday when if you listen to the news show yesterday, I mentioned they would now change the propaganda towards Iran, move away from Syria, take the heat off Syria for a bit, and let's all put the pressure on Iran, because they haven't hit the timescale they needed to go into Syria. We're now in August. He should have been there by the end of July. So they're already on the hot foot. They're already on the back foot. Sorry, they're already dancing on hot tiles. But basically, what's happening here now? You can see here now that the propaganda is now starting to move towards Iran, which was predicted by myself yesterday in the news show. Now, what's basically taking place is they're trying to blame Iran. Again, this is like Netanyahu, who said Iran was responsible for the bombings in Bulgaria, the bombings in Bulgaria. So basically what happens is these bombs go off, then Netanyahu screams at it within minutes, within seconds of the bomb going off, it's Iran. And, and the Western world will just nod their heads. At the end of the day, no, this is further propaganda. This goes on to say, on Monday, US Magistrate Frank Mass imposed civil penalties and said the money would be paid to 110 survivors and the estates of 47 victims. A plaintiff legal team said it may seek the seizure of Iranian assets in order to pay the families. Now, look, guys, anyone who lost people in 9/11, my heart and soul goes out to them. They were the victim of their own government's evil plans. They obviously may not know that. Some of them may have woke up to that. But basically now what they're trying to do is put financial pressure on the Iranian people in a time of crisis. And this is another way of breaking down the society financially. Okay, so this is basically the propaganda that is continuing as we go on. In a bit of good news, we have the University of California Davis pepper spray assailant, which was this gentleman, if you can call him a gentleman, spraying innocent protesters during the Occupy movement this year with pepper spray in the faces. Now, what's actually happened now is a judge has reported that the pepper spray assailants, the people who sprayed the pepper spray into the victims' faces, must the report must now include all of the officers' names, effectively making all of the people who were perpetrators against these innocent people, who were affecting their right to peaceful protest, have actually now got to be named and shamed, which is a huge, huge leap. Now, this is what I've been talking about before, guys, if you've been following my stuff via Soul Light Initiative. Basically, I've always said that when the job is done, when the atrocities are committed, these people who think they're very empowered and they're very oh, I'm part of the system, I'm part of the elite, they are dropped from height and doo-dooed on by the system because they are scapegoats. And anyone who believes, who's listening to this, who listens to the truth and movement in general, needs to wake up and understand that when you have done your bit, you are gone. They will treat you worse than the people you were treating. This entity went round with people in peaceful protest. They weren't attacking them. All they were doing was sitting there in a peaceful protest to demand the change in the system because they were protesting against the 1% of power against the 99% of poverty and struggle. And it was an Occupy movement that was probably generated to see how the forces would take place with their sonic weaponry and so on and so forth, which was deployed in numerous places, including New York. And we have this officer, should we say, this entity, spraying innocent people who were doing nothing in the face with pepper spray. And by the way, CNN and Fox are now reporting that pepper spray is a plant-based food stuff. So, if you want chips, spray some pepper spray on your chips or in your soup. And apparently it's a food stuff. It's a flavouring. And again, this is the numpty crap that they put out there and expect everyone to swallow and go, oh yeah, that must be right then. So all this man was doing was actually spraying flavouring into these people's faces. That's the angle. That's what they're trying to do. Okay, so this report comes out of Russia Today. And it basically goes on to say, Lieutenant John Pike's long reign of burning eye water and terror is over. The University of California, Davis cop that made headlines for blasting peaceful protesters with military-grade pepper flavouring spray last year is no longer employed by the school. Pike, a Sacramento police officer turned campus cop, became the target last year of a nationwide campaign spearheaded by activists with Occupy Wall Street and Anonymous after images of him discharging bursts of pepper flavouring spray at the faces of seated US Davis protesters went viral on the internet and caught even the mainstream media's attention. Outrage over the incident eventually propelled the school to launch an internal investigation into the event of November 18, 2011, and followed months of paid administrative leave. A campus official confirmed this week that the school no longer employs Lieutenant Pike. So a great victory there for people who've been on the ball, been trying to spread the word through the Truth Movement, through the Twitters, through the Facebook. Hats off to everybody who's done this. The people who've posted on Facebook that their tenacity and their drive has kept going and going and going, and not allow bullies like this sergeant, his name's Lieutenant John Pike, to get away with thinking he was beyond the law. So applause to everybody who's managed to gain this outcome for the people, freedom and the rights of the whole population and the 99% in general. Moving on to further good news, which is almost a Christmas come early type thing, two bolts of good news. We have a headline coming out of, again, Russia Today regarding the end of capitalism in Bolivia is to expel Coca-Cola in the wake of the 2012 Mayan apocalypse. Now, how this goes is, if you look at the Bolivian people and you look at where Bolivia is situated, La Paz, stuff like that, there's a lot of, let's put it, artifacts that's been left over from previous civilizations there. Bolivia houses a lot of the crystal skull myths. You've got Peru, which is right on the top of there, where the Peruvian Chichen Itza, you've got all of that goes on there, which is to do with the Mayan calendar, which is to do with the Mayan people, the Toltecs, the Aztecs, the Olmecs, all of these cultures that have come from this area. Now, they've got a hell of a lot of stuff to do with the likes of the ancient alien theories, shall we say, where they have areas of the place where you find rocks that are cut with laser-like precision and stuff like that. So basically what the Bolivian government, and they need to be applauded for this, is what they're saying is in the wake of the 2012 Mayan thingy, apocalypse, which is the end of the Mayan calendar, what they're saying is they're not talking about the end of the world, they're talking about a new way of thinking and feeling. And what they're saying is Coke represents capitalism, which is gain, which is slavery, because it's like, if you haven't got the same car as me and I drive a really big petrol guzzling car, then you are a lesser person than me. And this is how our psyche has been manipulated to believe in the last couple of years about this is how it goes, and it isn't. So the believing government are actually going to move away from this in the year of 2012, and it's all down to this little fellow, which is the Mayan calendar. Now this expires on December the 21st, the year 2012, and there's a myriad. I think I did some a talk on this a while back about the Mayan calendar. It can be accessed through 514JG on YouTube if you would like to revisit that, or if you haven't seen it yet, quite welcome to go and do that. Basically, this ties in with that, and it says on this report, it says, in a symbolic rejection of US capitalism, Bolivia announced it will expel Coca-Cola Company from the country at the end of the Mayan calendar. This will mark the end of capitalism, and usher in a new era of equality, the Bolivian government says. And I applaud the Bolivian government for this. This is what all governments should be doing, but Bolivia are under the capitalist government, dark cabal regime, you see. December the 21st of 2012 will be the end of egotism and division. December 2012 should be the end of Coca-Cola, Bolivian Foreign Minister David Chiquehencia decreed. I'm probably spelling that wrong. With the bomb blast worthy of a viral marketing campaign. The coming end of the Mayan lunar calendar on December the 21st of this year has sparked widespread doomsaying of an impending apocalypse. But the governor argued differently, claiming that it would be the end of days for capitalism, not the planet. The planets will align for the first time in 26,000 years, a Mayan cycle, sorry. And this is the end of capitalism and the beginning of communitarianism. That's a good word, isn't it? I've read that before. Basically, the minister goes on to say about that, and is quoted by Venezuelan newspaper El Periodico. The minister encouraged people of Bolivia to drink macanechi, a peach-flavoured soft drink, as an alternative to Coca-Cola. Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez followed suit, encouraging his country to ditch the American beverage for fruit juice produced in Venezuela. Right, it goes on to say, McFailure. Last year, Bolivia became the second Latin American country not to have a single McDonald's. The fast food giant finally gave up on Bolivia after being unable to turn a profit in the country for over a decade. Following this failure, the monolithic multinational released a documentary titled Why McDonald's Failed in Bolivia, referencing surveys, Scientologists, nutritionalists, and historians. The company came into the conclusion that it was not their food that was the issue, but a culturally driven boycott, which is absolutely ridiculous. What happened was the people of Bolivia, who live off the land, who eat fresh vegetables and cultivate their own foods, are actually living on a high standard of vibration. And what took place was when they ate that dross and crap that comes out of a McDonald's restaurant, which gains your weight by thousands of % if you eat it regularly, decided this wasn't for them, and as a government and as a culture refused to have it in the country. And the same's going to be said now for the Coca-Cola, which ties in again with the study that came from the Russian biologist researcher in the news a couple of days ago, where he said he won't touch fizzy drinks anymore because they frankly are evil. They were his words, that was his quote. So it seems that we are on the turn, guys, and we are moving forward positively. And there are places on our planet that are going to reject the globalist regime, and that can only be applauded. Iceland has its own government now, separate from the globalist regime. Bolivia, Peru, Paraguay, Brazil, Chile. These places are all waking up, and they're saying no more to this control. And this is exactly what the Mayans were talking about. It's not going to be a 50,000-foot wave. It may have something to do with the solar flares from the sun, but I don't think it's an extinction level event. And at the end of the day, guys, countries are waking up to a new way of thinking. Let's applaud it and let's go with it, and let's start putting positive energies out there, and let's start turning the tide towards a more humanitarian way of living our lives. Right, that's going to wrap it up for today, folks. Thank you very much for spending the time listening to the show. I do try and keep these shows a bit short, but you know what it's like. You go into the news and that's how it is. We are moving towards an awakening, folks. We are moving towards throwing off the shackles and moving into a better form of living. I cannot wait for this to take place. I look forward to it each day. Hopefully we'll all take the journey together and we can create a more prosperous and loving future. Any comments and critique and suggestions for the show, as always, soul-light@hotmail.co.uk. And until next time, take the very best of care and have the best of evenings. Namaste.